It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a bank information. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show, and I'll tell you what, today is one of those days where politics and money are crossing paths in a big way. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about the stimulus package that was passed by the House and the Senate, and it hasn't been passed by the Senate yet, but the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that recently was passed. And I'll tell you what, there's some things about this that I find, well, there's some good things in it, don't get me wrong, but there's some things in it that I find very concerning. And I find it very concerning, especially when we think about in terms of how it's going to affect our economy, how it's going to affect jobs, businesses, the markets, all those types of things. I believe we're in for some major changes going forward. And today's show, we're going to talk a lot about this bill, again, that was passed by the House and, in the Senate. And we'll see if it gets passed by the Senate or what changes happen, which most likely will happen. I rarely discuss a bill that hasn't been passed yet, by both houses. Well, of course, it becomes a law by then. But before it even goes to the Senate, actually. But this one is so far-reaching and has such a big economic impact. My concern is some of the aspects of this could be really financially devastating. Maybe that's the best word to put it. I don't want to be scaring people, but it's got some very significant impacts and really could change our economy. And so unless our senators hear from us, the constituents, us, the voters, the people this affects, we could could likely go through with minimal changes. And that's my great concern. What is it that's in this bill? Now, what I would really encourage anybody to do, you can search it, go online, of course, and look at what's in the bill, okay? And figure out, there's a lot of things there that can really be affected and you can really learn. But here's a couple of things. Of course, we've all heard about the minimum wage being raised to $15. The bill itself doesn't change it to $15, but it does recommend that the government move to that. And there's a lot of discussion, arguments on both sides about $15 minimum wage. But a lot of economists look at it as many estimates are that over 1 million jobs will be lost. It's particularly hardest hit will be those lower income folks and tend to be less educated, of course. But the lower income folks is going to hit the hardest. And especially at a time when we're coming out of a coronavirus shutdowns and our economy jobs are struggling and all that, it just seems to be a particularly bad time to try to implement something like that. I mean, here's the thing. Those of you that listen know that I'm pretty hands off in terms when it comes to government. In terms of my opinion is libertarian, if you will, especially in terms of I don't like government interference, and I think the marketplace should play the major role here. But that's neither here nor there. One of the other things though that I think is going to have a really big impact is the extension of the unemployment benefits. In fact, they're talking about, adding the weekly bonus of $400 over and above what the states pay and extending that for nearly a year and a half. And actually, some of the studies, it shows that approximately 50% of working Americans would actually get paid more to not work, be on unemployment versus working. If half the country, now I'm not going to say everybody is going to take the unemployment, but if a significant portion of those people go on the unemployment for the next year and a half, what's that going to do to our economy? Where you have a significant portion of folks just, frankly, staying at home and not working and getting paid to do it. How is that going to affect businesses trying to find employees? Okay, that's going to be challenging for the businesses. But it also is I think, setting a very bad example, to get paid. It just doesn't seem to me to be a good work ethic. I know that sounds way out of touch with the world today, but it's definitely not a good work ethic. I mean, you got to understand, I grew up on a farm in Missouri, all right? we had to work for we worked for our food, okay? Hard work never killed anybody, if you know what I'm trying to say. It's just, I think it's setting a bad example, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get used to that kind of situation, which unfortunately from a political standpoint, I think is what some people want, but that's a whole nother discussion. Here's another one though this one really gets me. If the government, the bill is going to pay up to 85% of someone's COBRA's health insurance, even if they leave a job by quitting. So if they quit, the government, I shouldn't say that. We, the taxpayers, are going to pay 85% of the health insurance for folks that quit their job and get on unemployment and get paid as much or more for not working than working for up to a year and a half, basically. That sounds real fair. I like this one. Planned Parenthood is going to be able to receive PPP loans. Yeah, they really need it. Yeah, they need it more than a lot of small businesses. Of course they do. Here's another one. Stimulus checks could go to families where a parent is an illegal immigrant. Okay. And also they can get the insurance premiums 85% paid for too. So you can be an illegal immigrant and basically get paid checks, get money, which also is part of what this is all about too, is, I love this one. Keeping the schools closed. This is a great one. So $130 billion is in the bill, on top of the $110 billion that was already given to schools in the first coronavirus stimulus package, even if they remain closed. You got to love that. Man, I'll tell you what, if I could figure out a way to get, a lot of people are figuring out a way to get paid not to do anything. I find that quite interesting. There seems to be a theme here, right? Also, labor unions, including the teachers' unions, will now have access to PPP funding worth up to $10 million per union. So the teachers' union, for example, will able to get money funding from the government. Well, I keep saying from the government. Remember, the government has no money, folks. That's one of the lessons, or one of the key points I think a lot of people are missing. The government has no money. Their money comes from us, the taxpayer, through taxes. So we get to pay unions, including teachers' unions, up to $10 million to keep schools closed and throw another $130 billion at the schools, whether they're open or not. And then a kick in the pants. I got school-age children. Now, of course, ours are doing online school. One of the positives of all this, I think, is I don't think any reasonable person can say that our education system has been, it certainly doesn't lead the world by any stretch. Just about every measurement I've ever seen, we're in the bottom, just about the bottom of every educational measurement around the world, even though we spend as much or more than just about any other place in the world. So it's not a money problem. It's interesting. We've thrown a lot of money at education, and public education in particular. But we're not getting the results with the test scores and all that kind of stuff from any measurable standpoint. And there's a lot of folks that are very frustrated, and a lot of things have come out about what the schools are teaching. And it seems like to me a lot of the stuff, if they're not teaching the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, they're teaching a lot of social science stuff, a lot of things that, frankly, many of the parents don't agree with. Yet the kids, some people call it indoctrination. It is one of the reasons why we, with our girls. Now, I'll tell you what, the one positive I see, the silver lining out of this, I hate to see all this money go out to schools, for example, and for them to basically get paid for doing nothing to speak of, not even be open. But the positive thing is it won't allow some of these more radical or areas of the education system influence our kids as much. And I consider that a positive thing. If you're a parent today, I'm going to say you really need to get involved with your school board and your school district and learn and determine what it is the kids are actually getting taught. And does it fit your values? And looks like in many cases, the schools are going to get, if this bill passes, schools are going to continue to get paid to stay, whether they're open or not. And so this is an opportunity. Look into online schooling, look into homeschooling, look at it, all the charter schools, other alternatives. Folks, this is the time to do it. This is the opportunity. And if we see a major shift in that area, where parents take charge again, take control of their kids' education, we could see a major shift in our society over time. I mean, it's no secret that liberal values have taken over the education system. I mean, I've got another article here that was quite interesting, and I'll maybe talk about it, but with the attacks on free speech and all that, a lot of that has originated out of universities. And I've seen studies recently showing that something like 95% of university professors today voted Democrat and donate Democrat. When you have such an overwhelming majority of one side of the political spectrum, or any idea for that matter, whether you agree with it or not, when something's that far out of balance, frankly, there's a problem. And the students are not getting a fair, balanced education, are they? In many cases. So this is an opportunity for us as Americans, as parents, to take charge of our kids' education, okay? I'm going to go into some more things here, but I want to stop for a second, because this is a money show. And, how does this tie in with money, all this political stuff here? Well, this is a financial bill. This is a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. If passed, would be the second largest second largest financial bill ever passed in the history of our country. The largest, of course, was I think in April or so of 2020. That was a $2.2 trillion thing. That was just incredible. The thing is, here's one thing I want to share with this. About half, what they're saying is about 1 trillion of the 2.2 trillion that was passed last year has still not been spent. It's still available. So almost half of the money that was passed in 2020 for all the various things that was passed, the stimulus, is still available, unspent. And then we're going to tack on another almost 2 trillion on top of that. That gives you an idea of the scale of what we're talking about here. Now, the other part of all that is that money that our government has to spend from us? No. It's actually, they're printing money, aren't they? It's borrowed money. It's by printing more dollars. Here's a basic economic lesson here that's important to understand. By printing more money, the value of things go down. We're going to talk about that further in the next segment, so stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And, we're talking today a lot about this new coronavirus bill that's been passed by the House. And it's in the midst of being worked on. We'll see what happens, of course, how many changes are made and things like that. But some of the things that are in this bill, frankly, are kind of alarming, and especially to those of us like myself who tend to lean towards the fiscal conservative side of things. Look, I understood it's a Democratic House, we have a Democratic Senate, we have a Democratic president. I didn't expect to be a lean and mean kind of financial bill, okay? I mean, I expected there to be a lot of extracurriculars that me personally I don't agree with or feel like is not good for our country or our economy or anything else. The scale of this, though, is massive, unlike almost anything we've ever seen. Of course, last year we had the first coronavirus stimulus package. It was a $2.2 trillion package. Here's the thing that people need to understand. About $1 trillion of that, so nearly half of that money, is still unspent. It hasn't been spent by wherever it's intended to go. And now they're talking about adding another almost $2 trillion on top of that of spending. That in itself is bad enough. But what some of the things that they're planning to spend the money on, I think are going to be very big negatives for our economy going forward. Some of the more egregious things, I've already been sharing some of this. Some of the more egregious things are things like unemployment benefits extending out for another year and a half almost, okay? And showing that roughly half of Americans would actually, working Americans, would actually get paid more to stay home than work. If you have a significant portion of folks not producing, not doing anything, not furthering their career, not generating anything, and they do that for a year or so, frankly, that's probably going to set them back in their careers. Okay, it's not good for the economy so much. I mean, they're still getting the money, but again, where's the money coming from? This is the thing I talk about over and over and over again. Our government has no money. The funds they receive come from the taxpayer, us, the folks that are contributing into the system. So when they say we're going to spend this amount of money, always understand, where did that money come from? And it's coming from us. When they say we're going to pay for unemployment benefits for nearly a year and a half, basically for some folks to stay at home and do nothing, you're paying for that. I'm paying for that. Does that seem right or fair? I don't know. That's the problem, okay? You know, by the way, they're talking about adding another I talked about $130 billion on top of the $110 billion for school funding. So more than doubling the amount of money for schools, even if they stay closed. And on top of that, the unions, including teacher unions, can get PPP loans up to $10 million. So the unions can get paid, the teachers can get paid, the schools can get paid, and they don't even have to be open. And by the way, there's no opportunities for a family if a student is not being served by their school to do anything. You're just out of luck. If there was ever an opportunity to consider alternatives like online schooling, homeschooling, charter schools, or various other things, now would be the time, folks. Parents, it's time to it's time for the parents to take charge of their kids' education, because the government and our schools are not. Okay? That's just what you really need to consider and understand. You know, why is this all of such concern? There's more. I'm going to encourage folks to look up online the particulars about this coronavirus stimulus package. Why is this of such concern? You know, if people are not working because they're staying home because of unemployment, and more stuff that's in here, and the amount of debt that this is going to add on top of what is already there, that's going to have an effect on our economy. And I got to say one other thing. Right before the end of the last segment, I mentioned, you know, when the government prints more money, there's more and more dollars in the system, that can lead to inflation. And the last statement I said before we cut off, I ran out of time, was that can cause the value of things to be less. That's accurate, but let me spell that out a little bit more. More dollars chasing goods and services like houses and cars and anything else, any tangible items, those things, more dollars chasing it causes the prices to go up. But are they really worth more? No. It just means that you have to pay more for them, okay? So the thing is, we could see inflation start to rear its ugly head, all right? And that's something we need to be concerned about. And when you look at things like the markets and stuff, they usually typically hate inflation. So if we start seeing some significant changes in our economy, some of it being affected by all these things in this package, or we have a slowdown of the economy, do you think that's going to affect the markets? Do you think that's going to affect our accounts, retirement, and all those kinds of things? Interest rates? Gosh, folks, if inflation picks up, that'll pick up interest rates, of course. All right. Is it time to start thinking about diversifying? I know the stock market has been on a tear. That's no secret. It has been for the last decade, a historic run. Okay? But like any run, I'm not saying I don't know when it's going to happen or exactly how these things are going to play out, but it certainly looks like it's going to cause some real changes, significant changes. Okay? There's going to be real winners and losers. And that uncertainty and all that stuff really can cause some real problems. And diversification is going to be hugely important. That's why I haven't talked about this much yet today, but your personal bank can be a great diversification play. I mean, first of all, you have underlying guarantees, okay? Your money's growing, you have some guarantees. You got tax defer, it's taxed. You can, if you set it up correctly, it's income, you can grow it income tax-free, access it income tax-free, and pass it on to your heirs income tax-free. So you're creating a tax-free bucket of money. With all this government spending, do you think taxes might be a little higher in the future? Could they be a lot higher in the future? That's happened. In fact, if you haven't read this book, The Power of Xero by David McKnight, I've recommended this many times. If you have an IRA or a 401k, I strongly recommend reading that book. Again, it's called The Power of Xero by David McKnight. And it talks about those very things where, in the premise of the book is simple. If the tax rates double in the future, well, 2 times 0 is still 0, isn't it? So my point is these retirement accounts, these tax-deferred accounts, can be qualified accounts, can be significantly impacted by future tax rates. And if the government putting themselves in more and more debt, that certainly increases the likelihood of inflation and or higher taxes or both. These are things that need to be strongly considered. And diversification needs to be looked at as, in my opinion, is something that should be really strongly considered at this point, because irregardless of what ends up happening and gets passed, I do believe we're looking at some significant shifts and changes in the direction of our economy and our money and what's going to happen. And that'll affect our retirement and taxes and all of that stuff. So contact me at yourpersonalbank.com to look at the diversification option that could make a lot of sense. Stay tuned. We're going to talk more about what's in this bill in the next segments.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We're talking a lot about this coronavirus bill that's been passed by the House, and they're working on it still as we speak. Of course, a lot of things can change. My hope is many of them do. My fear is they don't. And really, again, the key is understanding, is understanding the scale of this. The key thing I think to understand, first of all, is we passed a $2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package in 2020. And as of this date, approximately half of that money has still not been spent. And now our Congress is proposing to spend another $1.9 trillion, which would, in essence, double up more again on what already we've spent. The level of spending here is what is staggering. The amount of debt that our federal government already has is increasing at an exponential rate never seen in the history of mankind. What will this debt do to our money, to our economy, to our retirement, to the markets? That remains to be seen. Will this cause inflation? Will it require the government to raise taxes to pay up the interest, not to just even pay the debt anymore? I mean, that's becoming almost a foregone conclusion, just to make the interest payments on the debt. I mean, when you're just making interest payments on your debt, you know financially you have a problem, okay? Well, that's where our federal government's headed. And again, this could have dramatic impacts on our money. I strongly encourage folks to research, look this up, get some information, and reach out to your congressperson. And if you want to see this kind of spending that's going to get loaded onto us, our kids, and our grandkids, heck, I don't know how many generations would take to pay this off, okay? If ever. If we want to see that, and see a dramatic change in our economy, which is quite likely to happen, then don't do anything. But if you don't want to see that, now's the time to speak up. Now's the time to let our senators, because that's where it's the House passed it, so it's time to let our senators know what we think, okay? There's an amazing amount of spending. I've already touched on some of them. One of the most egregious ones, two of them, is the unemployment benefits extending for nearly a year and a half, and approximately 50% of working Americans would actually get a pay raise by not working. Think about how that's going to affect our economy. And not only that, just the individual people that are basically getting paid to stay home. And then the other one that really gets me is they're more than doubling the amount of money to schools, of which they've already been paid, and they get it whether they are open or not. And the unions, including teacher unions, can get PPP loans up to $10 million per union. Folks, they're going to get paid whether they do anything or not. Now's the time, if you're a parent, to look at alternatives for your students, for your kids. Also, now's the time financially to look for alternatives for diversifying your money for retirement, looking for some safe alternatives. Your personal bank still has, we have companies still paying 6% dividends, even in today's interest rate environment, and have been paying that for the last 25 plus years and never missed a dividend since before the Civil War. That's powerful. We, I believe, are going into some significant change. We're headed that direction with our economy and with our money. And so diversifying is one of the biggest keys, one of the strongest things you can do. If you're all in one place and something happens to that, you're at risk. Okay, I don't think I need to explain that to anybody. The key is diversification. And with some guarantees, with some, you can grow that money tax-free. You can access it tax-free. You got liquidity, access, and use of your money. And that could become extremely, extremely valuable going forward. We saw the value of that when coronavirus hit. Well, not really the virus, but when the shutdowns hit. People lost jobs and businesses, and their income was dramatically affected. And those that had reserves, had cash, had available, not money, say, in the market. I mean, remember, March, the markets basically dropped 30% in 30 days. Now, thankfully, they came back quickly. Frankly, much quicker than most people thought they would. But nobody knew at the time if that was going to happen. And frankly, that's not something you wanted to count on at that point, right? Having that diversification. If 2020 didn't teach you anything, financially, it certainly should have taught us that we need to have diversification. We need to have a source of funds that have some guarantees, that are liquid and accessible and usable when we need them, when the ground shifts, when the economy shifts, when our job or business situation shifts dramatically in short notice. So contact me at yourpersonalbank.com for more information. I'll be happy to discuss this with you and how it can benefit you. Stay tuned in the last segment. We're going to talk a little bit more about this bill.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
All right, we're rounding third on Your Personal Bank Show, and today we've been talking about the coronavirus relief package that was passed by the House, or working on it with the Senate, at least at this point. It's a $1.9 trillion bill, and let's put things in perspective, and this is why I'm concerned. We passed a $2.2 trillion stimulus package in 2020. Approximately half of that money has still not been spent yet. And now we're talking about adding almost another $2 trillion of federal deficit spending. What is federal deficit spending? Folks, they're printing money. And who's paying for all this? Who's going to have to pay the interest on all this? It's not the government. Remember, the government doesn't have any money. Any money they have is what they get from us, the taxpayers. Like I said, I'm going to encourage folks to check. This affects our money. This affects our economy. This will affect our taxes, inflation likely, all these types of things. This could be a sea change type of event, or trigger that, in terms of we've had a great economy, we've had great markets, we've had all these things. That could be changed dramatically in fairly short order. And research what's in this bill, and contact your senators, contact your representatives, and let them know how you feel about this. I've already talked about some of what I think some of the more egregious things, like paying unemployment benefits for nearly a year and a half, extra unemployment benefits, and about 50% of working Americans would actually make more money staying at home, getting paid to stay home. The other one is they're more than doubling up all the money for schools. They'll get paid even if they're not open. Boy, that sounds like quite the gig. And then labor unions and stuff will be able, including teachers unions, will be able to get PPP loans up to $10 million per union. The other thing, even, I love this one. You know, I've been big on the PPP loans that help small businesses. Well, now they're actually adding more groups that can qualify for PPP, and all of them are large type groups, things like nonprofits and labor unions and country clubs, which is going to squeeze out the small businesses more, okay? The ones who ever actually really need the money. And I love this one. Even convicted criminals can receive PPP loans. Don't you love that? I thought that was an interesting aspect of all this. The one that the one thing, I haven't talked about this much yet. There's the one area that most people are probably going to talk about or focus on is they're talking about sending a stimulus check basically to every taxpayer, $1,400 plus additional monies for dependents. And that'll phase out on couples up to $200,000 of combined income. So they're going to send a bunch of checks out. Okay, a bunch of folks got checks last year. They're looking at basically doing it again, even more this time. Now, that'll certainly have an immediate initial stimulus effect to the economy. I don't think there's any argument there. But my concern is, again, the amount of money that's going to go out, that's frankly borrowed money, it's frankly the printing presses, we're looking at getting ourselves in a situation where inflation and higher taxes could become an issue down the road. It sounds great now. It's going to sound great to a lot of people. Hey, I'm getting more money. I'm getting paid to stay at home. All these things sound great in the short term. I understand that. But we need to look at how is this going to affect things down the road a little bit. Not only in our lives, but what about our kids or grandkids? How's this going to affect them? How is our economy going to be affected? How's it going to affect the markets and taxes and inflation, our retirement, the stuff that we've worked hard to put away for? Anyone who's done that, okay? Those things don't happen by accident. I've been in the financial business for over 20 years, and I can count on one hand the number of folks that I've met with that won the lottery or got large inheritances. Okay, two hands probably. And we're talking out of well over 1,000. I have over 1,000 people I've worked with in my career, well over that number. Okay, the rest of them, you know what the vast majority of folks did? They worked hard. They put a portion of their money away. They saved, they invested. They were smart with their money. They lived within their means. They did all those things. This type of spending, these types of things punish those kinds of people. People that live by the rules, do what's right, try to do something for themselves and their families. And, well, if inflation comes into play because there's so many more dollars chasing things, purchasing items, that means, well, your dollar's worth less, isn't it? It takes more dollars to buy something. That's what inflation is all about. I love this one too. There's about $600 million for additional paid leave for federal employees and postal workers. Now, certainly our federal employees need extra money, right? They haven't been paid enough. They've been struggling through this. They've had to, unlike our business owner friends who've been shut down, our federal employees have, for the most part, got to stay home and still get paid. In fact, I don't know of any federal employees who weren't paid through all these shutdowns. But they're going to get more money for paid leave. Well, I guess it's nice to be one of them, right? I hate to be such a downer. I'm a pretty optimistic type of person. And I really believe in our country and the people in our country that, we have there's a lot of amazing people and just good, solid, hardworking folks. I mean, generally speaking, that's who I know. That's who I work with. That's who I meet through the radio, when I was traveling the country doing workshops and things. In fact, it was funny. I got asked this question the other day, not long ago, and somebody was asking me, you were traveling quite a bit prior to COVID and talking to a lot of people about financial matters and the personal bank, how you can put money away, have access to the funds, get a solid dividend, have guarantees, reduce your taxes, get positive arbitrage on the money so you can earn interest on the money you spent even. If none of that makes sense to you, I'm going to encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com and listen to some of the previous shows where I explain how Your Personal Bank works more in depth, or contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. But I had this question. I thought it was very interesting. They said, you were traveling basically everywhere from Chicago west, okay? And I'm in Phoenix, of course. And they said, did you find a difference in people you talked to in various places? And I said, I thought I would initially too, thought go to places like California. I've spoken LA a number of times, and Seattle, and I also like Chicago and Denver, which are, you think about as more traditionally conservative, and those places more traditionally liberal, okay? And I thought I would see a difference. And I said, what I found was remarkable. Yeah, I have some folks that I'm a social conservative. I don't apologize for that. That's my upbringing. That's my belief. I don't shove it down somebody's throat, but I think it's important to me. And I know I have some clients who don't agree with me, say, on social issues. That's perfectly fine. We have the right to disagree in this country still, at least at this point. But when it comes to wanting to do something for their family, build their wealth, build their business, do those kinds of things, it's remarkable how similar people really are. And so I found very little difference. And that's, I guess, why I was so surprised, and I've been so surprised this past year, by the level of vitriol, anger, frustration, attacks one side to the other and back and forth. Because I have clients and folks I know who are staunch Republicans. I have clients and folks I know well who are staunch Democrats. I have folks that are both liberal and conservative. Okay? I work with a number of different cross-section, kind of a cross-section of America. And again, the people I work with, there's not much, we have far, far more in common than we have that we don't. And I just get frustrated when I see people attacking others because of their political belief or disagreement on what they think, or they're looking at them as as a part of a different tribe because they might look a little different. I don't understand that. I guess I do understand the reasons behind some of the leadership, and there's people out there that get power from many of these things. Obviously, the House passed this, and they did for a reason. This stimulus package, going back to that for a minute, and with all these various spending measures and all these things, they're getting something for it, or they're paying back favors, because, well, let's face it, a tremendous amount of money was spent in this past election. And some people called it, many parts of this as paybacks, if you will, for that. I suppose I just want to ask a simple question. What does this have to do, much of this, what does it have to do with improving our country? Where are the leaders? I'm sick and tired of partisans. I don't know if you are, but I'm tired of people that are leading partisan. They're doing things for it's a benefit for their group or their political faction or their whatever. Whatever happened to, being an American? And I even saw a poll recently. I guess I'm really out of touch because apparently this is like the lowest time in history, the fewest number of percentage of the people that are proud to be an American. You should have some pride in your country. Look, it's not perfect. I'm not going to try to say it is, and are there things that need to be improved? There are many things that have been improved over time. But here's the facts. Up until recently at least, I don't know about recently, but we had the freest, this is one of the freest societies in the history of man. That's just a fact. And like I said, I have some firsthand and secondhand very close knowledge, both, from friends and family, very close family history. My dad escaped from Hungary, from the Soviets, from an oppressive government. Okay, so I've got some close family history on this stuff. I've got good friends that escaped from places like Romania, who some of them got shot at as they were crossing the border by the border guards, and they're lucky to be alive today, literally. They risked their lives to come here. And I told the story last week about talking to a doctor friend of mine he's of Indian descent, grew up in Africa, went to school in England and college. And after he got done, he was he was a citizen of the world, and he could have gone anywhere. And I asked him a simple question. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Ask anybody who came from here, from somewhere else, legally. I said, why did you come to the States? You could have gone anywhere in the world. He says, you're right. And you hear the same response every time. He came here for opportunity. This is the land, or was the land of opportunity. Now, will it continue to be so? I certainly hope so. I still have faith that we can still be that country. These spending bills like this don't help that at all, that situation. In fact, it does much to hurt it, in my opinion, and it does a lot to hurt regular people who've worked hard and put some money away, or trying to put some money away, or want to put some money away for their future and do something positive for their family. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com to look at alternatives, look at diversification, look at how you can reduce your taxes, your future tax liability in particular, because if there was ever a time to do so, I'm going to say it's now.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.